Hi, I'm Kamali and I'm taking you through the stories people are talking about and sharing around the world on NewsFeed today. Video games classified as addictive by the United Nations. We ask, can something that's meant to be bad for you also be good? Mexicans caused an earthquake literally and in a footballing sense after this weekend's game. The First Lady's former and current speak out about terrible conditions kids are being kept in on the US-Mexico border. And thousands attend a memorial in Melbourne for a young woman murdered while on her way home from work. Now, top of our news feed, video games. Should we be worried about how addictive the games we play online, on our phones and on our consoles are? Now, the World Health Organization have placed gaming disorder in a category along with other addictive substances.
Gamers, texters, kids that are doing reading and watching YouTube videos get this dopamine release. When it stops abruptly, like when a parent or there's a time they have to stop, they really experience almost spontaneous withdrawals.
We have accepted the proposal that gaming disorder should be added in ICD-11. Let me remind you that gambling disorder was already there in ICD-10 and gaming disorder has now been added. And we feel confident that we have made the right decision on that.
Playing a game together actually builds up bonds and trust and cooperation, and we actually build stronger social relationships as a result.
All right, let's have a look at what else is trending on social media. Now, there was a football earthquake in Russia which set off a real earthquake in Mexico. First, here are the Mexican fans taking over the Moscow metro after their team's big win over Germany. And when the goal went in the 35th minute, fans in Mexico jumped and danced and celebrated so hard, the Institute of Geological and Atmospheric Investigations said an artificial quake had been recorded. And this video has been watched nearly 5 million times. It shows a woman blessing the faces of the Mexican national team as they appear on the telly. And the tweet with it says, "I am 100% convinced that my grandma was the reason Mexico won." And the South Korean team manager has admitted his players have been wearing the wrong numbers during training matches to throw off Swedish spies ahead of today's game. He said he hatched the plan because, quote, "it's very difficult for Westerners to distinguish between Asians." Now, Beyonce and Jay-Z are on a world tour right now, but they've still found the time to drop a new album over the weekend. It's called Everything Is Love and it features a number of duets from Mr. and Mrs. Carter. It's pretty good. It's available to stream where else on Tidal, and I've got it on heavy rotation because I'm seeing them play this weekend, so I want to know what I'm singing along to. Now, it's taken long enough, but The Incredibles 2 is finally out, and judging by the box office sales, it's been well worth the wait. Pixar's superhero family sequel has broken records, taking $180 million on its opening weekend, the best ever for an animated film.
Combustion imminent? What does that mean?
Now, we've been covering the growing crisis on the US-Mexico border. A policy that's been spearheaded by the Attorney General Jeff Sessions is seeing children separated from their parents when they cross the border illegally. Now, it's happened to at least 2,000 young people. The former First Lady Laura Bush has been trending all day on Twitter, and she penned a powerful op-ed in the Washington Post. She shared it online and tweeted this along with it. "I live in a border state. I appreciate the need to enforce and protect our international boundaries, but this zero-tolerance policy is cruel, it's immoral, and it breaks my heart." Now we have pictures from inside one of the facilities where the children are being held. As you can see, they're sleeping on thin mattresses on the floor and have those space blankets that you often see paramedics giving to people suffering from hypothermia after natural disasters. Now, conditions do look pretty bad, even though the US government continue to deny that they're separating families at the border. Even the president's own wife, Melania Trump, is against this treatment. Her spokeswoman said through CNN that Ms. Trump hates seeing children separated from their families and hopes both sides of the aisle can finally come together to achieve successful immigration reform. She added that she believes we need to be a country that allows all laws, but also a country that governs with heart. Now, as Turkey heads into the final straight of the election campaign, dogs have become part of the discourse. First, images of a puppy which had been cruelly attacked was shared online. The pup was found in the west of Turkey with its feet and tail cut off. Now, despite emergency surgery, it died a couple of days later. There was a huge outcry, and yesterday, Turkey's President Erdogan told a huge rally here in Istanbul that he will strengthen Turkey's animal cruelty laws if re-elected. Then, video of President Erdogan feeding a puppy in April of last year was shared by the Energy Minister and President Erdogan's son-in-law, Berat Albayrak. Now we're going to be covering all the election build-up here on TV and online in depth. We'll profile each of the candidates throughout the week. First up, here are 5 things you need to know about the vote.
Turkey's presidential and parliamentary elections will be held on June 24th. Here are 5 things you need to know. The elections will complete Turkey's transition to a presidential system of governance, after a majority vote approved the change in the April 2017 referendum, with 86% voter turnout, which is the highest since 1988. This is the first time in Turkey's history pre-poll alliances enabled by law can be formed. The People's Alliance includes the AK Party, MHP, and the BBP, and the Nations Alliance is made up of the CHP, E-Party, SP, and the DP. A total of 10 parties are taking part in the parliamentary elections. Minor parties will be able to take a seat in the parliament if the pre-poll alliance that they are in wins more than 10% of the votes in total. This enables more diversity in Turkey's parliament. 6 candidates will compete for the presidency. Erdogan is the joint candidate of the People's Alliance. All the other parties have separate presidential candidates. Muharrem İnce will run for CHP, Meral Akşener for E-Party, Selahattin Demirtaş for HDP, Temel Karamollaoğlu for SP, and Doğu Perinçek for VP. There is a 2-round system for the presidential elections. A candidate must win at least 50% share of the vote in the first round to be elected. Otherwise, there will be a second round on July 8th. And it will be contested by the 2 most voted for candidates from the first round.
All right, let's take you through some other stories you need to know this Monday. These are social media videos of the moments of an earthquake in Kyoto in Japan. 3 people have been killed and hundreds injured. It happened just before rush hour, around 8 a.m. And now the damage was pretty light considering how powerful and shallow the quake was. Seismologists say the quake may have been caused on a fault line that has not moved for 10,000 years. Thousands of people have attended a vigil in a park in Melbourne in Australia where a young woman was murdered last week. Eurydice Dixon was walking home from work and a 19-year-old man has been arrested and charged with her murder. The case has dominated Australian media after police told women they need to take more responsibility for their own safety. Now this is footage of a Tesla catching fire. The actor, Mary McCormack, shared it on Twitter saying, "This is what happens to my husband and his car today. No accidents, out of the blue in traffic on Santa Monica Boulevard. Thank you to the kind couple who flagged him down and told him to pull over. Thank God my 3 little girls weren't in the car with him." Now Tesla say this was an extraordinary, unusual occurrence. No kidding. Now, the Indian caste system is ancient and repressive, especially so if you find yourself born a Dalit. Omar explains who they are, where they're from, and what their future may be.
Who is being beaten is being described as said to be a Dalit.
A Dalit who was raped and then burnt to death by 2 upper caste 17-year-olds.
In fact, her limbs were chopped off after she resisted rape.
You may have heard of the term untouchables, referring to the people at the bottom of the Hindu caste system. These people call themselves Dalits, meaning oppressed or the crushed. And if you were to search that word on Google News, you'd find they are subjected to unspeakable horrors on a daily basis. So here are your questions about Dalits based on Google's autocomplete. I'm Omar, and I'm here to give you the answers. This is the 101. Who are Dalits, and why are they referred to as untouchables? First, to understand that, we need to get into the Hindu caste system. Most Hindus believe in reincarnation, and the caste, or social groupings to which someone is born into, isn't random. It's something they've earned and deserved based on their past lives. Traditionally, there are 4 main castes, ranging from the Brahmins, priests, to the Shudra, or labor class. A Dalit is actually born below the caste system. They're literally outcasts, and they're considered contaminated from birth. They are believed to be the worst of the worst and should be avoided and marginalized due to their own previous actions. What do Dalits do for a living? Well, there have always been exceptions, such as today the President of India is a Dalit. But generally, they have been given the worst jobs, things that no one else would do, things which many believe will contaminate the spirit. Killing rats, preparing dead bodies for burial, and anything having to do with dead cattle or their skins. These tasks are believed to corrupt the worker's soul to the extent that they shouldn't even be in the same room as someone from a higher caste. Where do Dalits live in India? Today in big cities, some Dalits are integrated and live side by side with other Indians, but a considerable majority live in slums. Traditionally, though, Dalits aren't allowed to even live within a village's boundaries. They can't enter Hindu temples and were even believed to be so unclean that they couldn't get water from the village well, because even their touch would taint it for everyone else. They didn't walk through the neighborhoods of the higher castes, and if someone from the priest or warrior caste came their way, they were expected to throw themselves face first on the floor so even their unclean shadow wouldn't touch others. They live all over India, and in many villages you'll find them living in the worst conditions imaginable. When can Dalits ascend? Since some Hindus believe that Dalits are being punished for actions committed during past lives, there's no way for them to move up in society. They have to marry other untouchables, live with other untouchables, and maybe, if they follow all the restrictions put on them regarding where they live and what they do, then they can be rewarded by being born into a higher caste next time around. Again, this is the traditional belief system, but it doesn't apply universally. Why Dalits protest? Simply put, their mistreatment is illegal. A few years after India gained its independence, the country passed the Protection of Civil Rights Act in 1955 in order to protect everyone, especially the weak and disadvantaged. Unfortunately, things didn't improve for the Dalits, and they fought hard for even more reforms. They won extra protections in 1989, but things were still really bad. Middle caste landowners found a new generation of Dalits who were unwilling to take the punishment and discrimination thrown at them. And the reply was harsh. Dalit houses were burnt down, people were raped and murdered, and lynchings were a normal occurrence. Even today, Dalits are being killed and mutilated on a regular basis, and it's not only in Hindu society, but in some cases also among Christian and Muslim Indians too. The secular constitution of India is supposed to make sure all its citizens are treated equally, and interestingly enough, the chairman of the Constitutional Drafting Committee was a Dalit himself. And so today, Dalits are simply protesting for their right to equality.
Well, that's your lot from the NewsFeed team. Do reach out to me with your questions, comments, complaints and suggestions. I'm at Kamali Melbourne. You'll find us 24/7 on Twitter, YouTube and Facebook. Follow, subscribe and add. See you again tomorrow.